Hello, everybody. Hello, students from Turkey. Hello from the University of Texas at Arlington, from Arlington, Texas, the United States of America. Thank you guys so much for joining. My name is Peter Lee. I am the graduate recruiter / international recruiter and admissions counselor here at the University of Texas at Arlington. So not only am I a professional employee at the university, but I'm also a student myself. I graduated here at this fine institution in 2015 with my bachelor's degree, and I'm currently in my master's program here in higher education. That is my focus. So I like to share that with you guys as well because I'm also a student. I think that's a unique perspective that I can share with you guys as well as what it's like to be a student here at UTA. But for the most part, my presentation is going to talk a little bit about my university, but also what to expect when you're studying abroad. I'm sure most of you guys are interested or thought about studying abroad, studying in the United States. What advice can I give you guys? I came up with some ideas that I want to share with you, some talking points that you guys should be thinking about when you're finishing your studies in Turkey, and if you're ready to study abroad. What should you be looking for? If you're interested in studying in the United States, one of the things that I like to talk to international students first is to share with them the scope of the US. The US is a very large country. It's actually divided into 6 main regions. We have Northeast, Southeast, the West region. For the most part, a lot of people are familiar with New York and California, but for the most part, the United States is much more diverse than that. I wanted to share you this because there's a lot of things to consider in regards to applying to US schools. Not only should the school have the right program that you want to study, but also is that school located in a geographic climate that you're comfortable with? Also, one of the most important things is finances, right? We know the cost of tuition is expensive, but there's other factors that you need to consider as well. I think this map really indicates a better understanding of the cost of living standards across the US. And it makes it very simple based off of the relativity of $100. So if I were to give you $100, this kind of shows you on the map within each state of the US how much your $100 is really worth. So if you look at California, for example, $100, you're actually losing some money. I know the numbers are kind of small, but $100, for example, will actually equate to around $88 or so. So you're losing about $20. Versus in Texas, where I'm from, $100, you actually gain approximately $3. Why is this important? Because one, cost of living standards are different throughout the US. So your money can really stretch further depending on where you live. And two, a lot of you guys, when you're applying to US schools, you may receive scholarship funding or other funding support. That's important to understand because if you were to receive a scholarship or if you were to take out a loan or something like that, $1,000 in California or $1,000 in New York could mean a big difference in comparison to other states like Texas, New Mexico, the Midwest area of the region of the US. So take that in consideration if you do apply to multiple schools, which I encourage you to do that. If you apply to multiple schools in the US and you're awarded a scholarship here or a scholarship there, put into perspective how much that scholarship is really worth in regards to where you're going to be living in the United States. And I think that gives you a good example. Keep in mind that this is just an example. The numbers are pretty accurate, but the numbers do fluctuate from time to time. Also, what's important to know is the United States is such a large country and it's super diverse. How many colleges do you think are in the US? I'm pretty sure you guys don't know the number. Maybe you do, but I didn't know. I was shocked to find that we have approximately 3,000 colleges across the United States. And that's a good thing, because that really opens up a lot of opportunities for you guys. But the downside the downside to that is it's very overwhelming. I can only imagine, if you're thinking about studying in the US, how overwhelmed you may feel. But speaking of where you possibly could be living, I think a lot of students do forget the fact that when you're applying to schools in the United States, you're going to be living there for a very long time. So you're going to be very invested within the culture of the place that you'll be living. So some other things that you want to consider is the college that you're interested in located in a small town, big city, or even maybe a farming community? It's really up to you where you really want to live. And why is that important is because oftentimes, if you're interested in programs in business, if you're interested in like finance, marketing, usually good programs will be located in very big cities. That gives you that practical experience. Excuse me, a lot of programs in the US will give you internship opportunities. Schools that are located in big cities, usually your internship opportunities and networking opportunities will expand, because there's a lot more opportunities for you to apply and network and meet future employers. So big cities is important if you're looking for maybe like a business program. Small towns, maybe you like that small town feel. Living in the big city, maybe you don't like the noise, too much traffic going on. Small towns have their unique life too. It's a little bit more slow paced, but a lot of times small towns will have a lot of traditions and things like that, and a lot of school spirit in a lot of these small towns. So that's something to take into consideration as well. And then farming communities. Who would want to live in a very rural area? Well, in fact, a lot of programs in the U.S. versus, for example, if you're interested in like agriculture, if you're interested in studying maybe sea life or something like that, they may be located in areas where there's large farming communities for you to do your research. So I think that's kind of important to share with you guys, just to show you that the United States has a vast variety of different types of living styles and things like that. I do want to share, because I am a representative of the University of Texas at Arlington. We are located in the southwest region of the United States, in the great state of Texas. If you're not familiar with Texas, Texas is the southern part of the US. I wanted to share some beautiful attractions of the southwest region, because a lot of times students forget that, one, it is important that you get a good education, but we also want to make sure that you have the opportunity to have fun and explore while you're here in the United States as well. So these are some amazing attractions that I wanted to share. A lot of times students have a perception of Texas, of what Texas is like. It's very cowboy culture, a lot of deserts. For the most part, that may be true in some sense. As you can see, there's some deserts and things like that. But you'd be surprised to know how diverse Texas is. In fact, that we are one of the largest growing economies in the United States. Not only do we have one of the best cost of living standards, you know, your $100 could stretch a lot further in Texas, but we do have a vast variety of companies and corporations here in Texas that are constantly looking to engage with our students and giving them internship opportunities and things like that. So I wanted to share with you, these are some main companies near the Dallas-Fort Worth area that are constantly engaged with our students. And you have the opportunity to meet with these employers and to network with them as well. So I wanted to share next is a little bit about my institution. Here at UT Arlington, we are a very large institution. So remember I showed you the slide about the big city. So if you're interested in a big city, but if you want like a small town feel, I would say the University of Texas at Arlington is a good choice for you. We are a large campus. We have over 41,000 students living here on campus. A large portion of those are international students. In fact, 4,000 students are international students. We're actually one of the most diverse student bodies across the country. Ranked 6th in the nation and having the most diversity. We're super proud about that because what you'll find is you'll have students representing over 130 countries here at UTA. So I think it's a unique experience that you're able to walk around campus and meet people from all walks of life, different countries, and things like that. So diversity is really big on us. Two is we are an R1 research institution. So earlier I mentioned that we had approximately 3,000 colleges across the US. However, only about 150 or so are considered an R1 research institution. That's huge. Why is that important to you guys? A comprehensive R1 research designation means that that university has a very high classification of research activity. That means that university is very big on research and research. So what that means for you guys is faculty members, professors, anybody that you engage with on campus, more than likely, they're going to be producing research, or they're going to have research projects that they are pursuing, as well as providing you a good education. That helps you because that gives you the opportunity to work with professors hand to hand on their research projects. So anything that you're interested in, if you're interested in maybe computer science, AI, robotics, we probably have a professor that's working on AI right now and producing research for future generations. If you're interested, in disease or finding a cure for cancer, for instance, we probably have a professor that's working on those preliminary findings to one day ultimately find a cure for cancer, for example. And you can play a part of that, along with you assisting professors. I think that'll be a really good resume builder and good experience and exposure. But also, we can afford you funding opportunities. A lot of times, scholarship opportunities will exist. A lot of times, if you're a graduate student or a PhD student, or if you're interested in graduate school, maybe in a couple of years down the line, that will open doors for you to become a graduate teaching assistant, a graduate research assistant. So there's a lot of doors for schools that are considered an R1 research institution. But like I mentioned earlier, we are a large school, so we have over 180 degree programs. So I'm hoping, whether you're interested in mathematics, biology, engineering, the fine arts, history, we should have the program that fits your needs. So I wanted to take the time now to talk about the admissions requirements for my university. This, along with most schools in the US, are typically going to be very similar, give or take a couple differences. Here at the University of Texas at Arlington, this is pretty much the breakdown of the admissions requirements. The very first thing is what you need to do is identify what are the test score requirements. Here at UT Arlington, we look at the SAT, ACT, as well as English proficiency, TOEFL, IELTS, as well as the Duolingo. In light of the current times right now, a lot of schools in the US are considered test optional. What that means is that the SAT or the ACT may not be a requirement. So you might want to check with the school that you're interested in applying to see if you have to submit SAT or ACT scores. Here at UT Arlington, we are test optional, so you do not have to submit the SAT and ACT scores. I would say during this time, even though it's unfortunate what's going on with COVID-19, I would say college is more accessible now than ever. So I think the opportunities are there because a lot of schools are no longer requiring students to submit certain test scores. English proficiency, however, you still have to you're still required to submit that. So my recommendation to you guys, if you're struggling with English proficiency, definitely look into the Duolingo exam. The Duolingo exam is is kind of like an application it's a lot cheaper, significantly cheaper than the TOEFL. And a lot of international students have been telling me that it is an easier exam, an easier alternative than the TOEFL. So that's my recommendation to you guys. But definitely check the schools that you're interested in applying to just to see if they are test optional. I have to warn you, some schools, even though they are test optional, a lot of the funding opportunities may still require you to submit test scores. So that's something to consider as well. Currently right now with the University of Texas at Arlington, we're still working on reviewing how do we rank students if they were not to submit an SAT or an ACT score to us. And based off of that, if you were to apply and not submit it, we may use your high school, GPA and other factors to award you scholarship funding. So keep that in mind. Okay, when you're going to schools in the U.S., other things to consider in regards to where you want to live, what part of the region you think is best for you, etc. Of course, everybody talks about rankings, right? I came up with a couple things that I think you need to consider in regards to how ranked is that school. There are so many rankings out there, but I think these are one of the more important things to consider. One is the safety. I think as an international student, a lot of times you may be worried because you're going to be living in a foreign country on how safe you will feel in America. I think UTA does a wonderful job in regards to student safety. In fact, in a recent reporting, we're actually one of the top safest university campuses in America. So top 100 safest campuses, UTA is within that list, and we're so honored to be there. And I think that kind of shows the environment that UTA has for its student. One, we are very inclusive because we're extremely diverse, so we're very welcoming. And two, we really have a good community here at UTA. Also, your program, right? How important is the ranking of your specific program? I couldn't list all of it. All of our rankings are available on the website, but if you see the U.S. News and World Report 2018, about 20 of our graduate programs have been included in their rankings, very high in the list. I broke down the application process for you just to make it a little bit more easier and streamlined to see. For the most part, this is what you should be expecting when you're applying to schools in the U.S. Most schools will use an online format, whether it be the Common App or applytexas.org. It's going to be a website, so all you have to do is just log on to the website, complete your profile online. The second step will be an application fee. Most schools will require an application fee. You'll pay the application fee, and then the next step is to submit official transcripts. So whatever institution that you graduated from, you'll just submit the transcripts to us. And then last but not least is to submit relevant test scores. So whether it be the SAT, ACT, if you're applying for a bachelor seeking student, if you're at the graduate or PhD level, you'll submit either the GRE or the GMAT, and then both populations will submit English proficiency scores, TOEFL, IELTS, or the Duolingo. And this is pretty common from most programs in the US. Keep in mind, additionally, a lot of programs and a lot of schools in the US will ask for an essay or letters of recommendations. So you want to make sure you pay attention to that, because some programs may be a little bit different and ask for additional documents on top of these basic requirements as well. Here at UT Arlington, if you're applying as a bachelor seeking student, like you just graduated from high school and you're wanting a 4-year degree, we don't necessarily require an essay or anything like that. For the most part, we're just going to be looking at your transcripts and your test scores. If you're applying as a master's or a PhD student, then it really is dependent on the program that you're applying for. Some programs will ask for a personal statement, so that'll be a 1-page essay that you'll explain and tell us why you'll be a good fit to be a student here. And then some programs will ask for letters of recommendations. If we do ask for letters of recommendations, we will require at least 3 letters of recommendations. So now is a good time to be connecting with your past teachers, past supervisors, past faculty members, just to reach out, just to say, hey, I'm applying to a school in the US. Would you be a good letter of recommendation for me? So this is probably the most important slide out of all the slides. A lot of times students will ask me about the tuition and living costs and expenses and things like that. So I wanted to share this with you guys. And I think this is a good gauge when you're looking at schools across the United States, how much you can be expected to pay. Keep in mind that this is just an estimate, and this is for one entire year. So in the United States, typically students will take classes in the fall semester, and then they'll take classes in the spring semester, and that kind of concludes one academic year. So 1 year here at UT Arlington will be a total of about $41,000 as an undergraduate student, about $36,000 as a graduate student. This is only an estimate because there's a lot of factors involved. Remember, I told you about the living standards, cost of living. So here at UT Arlington, the number that I put out, the $15,949, that's just a relative estimate, assuming that you're going to be living on campus. Keep in mind, a lot of schools in the US will require students to live on campus. And a lot of times that could be a very expensive cost if you're living in the dorm. Here at UT Arlington, we do not require students to live on campus. You're allowed to live pretty much anywhere that you deem fit. So it's very common for international students to live maybe 5 or 10 miles away off campus at a variable, and they were able to secure a very affordable apartment, and then their living, costs substantially reduces. So there are ways that the tuition and the total costs of your expenses could go down drastically. So it's very common for international students to live outside the university, and they take a bus to campus and things like that. So take that in consideration, because some schools will require you to live on campus, and that could cost a lot more than living off campus. Also, this is based off of the assumption that you're not going to receive any funding support or any scholarships. So we know that's not true. Some of us in the audience, and I hope a lot of you guys in the audience, will receive some form of funding support, whether it be a scholarship or a graduate teaching or graduate research funding assistantship that will help reduce your total tuition costs. So a lot of times students will receive scholarship support and their tuition will go down. It is also very common too for students not to receive a scholarship right away. A lot of times scholarships will be competitive, and they're very based off of funding at the time. So they may be difficult to receive right away, but it's very common for students to come on campus here in the US and maybe apply for a scholarship opportunity later down the road. So it doesn't necessarily mean your tuition will be fixed like this for the next 4 years or the next 2 years, because it could change based off of, hey, maybe by year 2, there was a funding opportunity that you were able to apply and you received it and your tuition goes down. But I think this is a good estimate when you're looking at schools in the US broadly on what you can be expecting to pay for at least 1 year of your time. Okay, next steps. So if you're interested in applying, these are some steps that I think is critical and important. One is just review the application requirements. I know there's a lot of colleges in the US. Each college will have a website and they will have a catalog that kind of shows all the programs that they offer and what kind of requirements they're looking for. So really identify the college you're interested in, whether it be my school or any other school in the US, and reach out to the website and find more information. Prepare early for exams. Identify first if that school is test optional or not, and what would happen if you were to be admitted as a student not providing test scores. So if the school was test optional and you did not submit SAT or ACT scores, how would that affect your funding opportunities? That's something that you need to figure out. So prepare early for exams. I always recommend students, if the school is test optional and the exam, and if you can take the exams, because I understand right now during these uncertain times, it may be difficult for you to take these exams. If you can still take these exams, then I would still encourage students to take them, because it really opens up a lot of doors later down the road for funding opportunities if you were to score very, very well on the SAT, ACT, English language exam, the TOEFL, IELTS, for instance, the GRE, the GMAT for graduate school. So I will always encourage students to take those exams if possible. If you can take it safely in your own home, then do it. Please do it. Even if the school is saying that it is test optional. Definitely reach out to the school and ask them what are the ramifications of not submitting test scores. So prepare early for exams, and then submit application materials by the deadline. So this is important too, especially if you're applying to multiple schools, because every school in the US will have multiple deadlines. So the three main deadlines that I can think of is, one is the application deadline. So you need to make sure you submit your application, whether it be Apply Texas or the Common App, and you submit all your relevant documents, test scores, letters of recommendation, etc., before the application deadline. But there's also another deadline too. It's the scholarship deadline. Oftentimes, the scholarship deadline is before the application deadline, because scholarship and funding opportunities are based off of the available funds that the school has at that time. So it's so important that it's great that you identify what the application deadline is, but you need to make sure that you apply well before in advance to ensure you meet any scholarship deadlines that are available. And then last is the housing deadline. It's silly, but a lot of times you don't want to be put in a situation where you've been admitted to school and you're about to fly to the United States, and then the housing, there's not enough room, or the place that you wanted to live at, there's not enough space. So check for housing deadlines as well. Some areas, dorms, apartment complexes, they may fill up, and those deadlines will vary. So there's a lot of deadlines you need to consider, especially when you're judging between whether I should go to this school or that school. So here at UT Arlington, these are some deadlines. We do have rolling admissions, meaning that we accept applications year-round. We're divided between 3 different terms or intakes. We have the fall term, the spring term, and the summer term. And these are the priority dates for each of those terms. But also, like I remember, the most important deadline is the scholarship deadline. So here are the scholarship deadlines. As you can see, they're a little bit earlier than the application deadline. So definitely pay attention to these deadlines when you're looking at schools. If you're really interested in that one school, look at those deadlines, identify what the deadlines are, and then you could work backwards from there. And thank you. That's the end of my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to start answering questions. I did hear a lot of, I do apologize, I'm not able to see the questions. So I did hear a lot of interactions going on. So let me go ahead and stop sharing. Okay. So Gubin asked, it is very expensive for a graduate from the University of Texas. Now, I understand that the cost factor is a main obstacle, especially for international students. So keep in mind, though, if you're a graduate student, there's going to be tons of funding opportunities that you can apply for. And a lot of times, some of these funding opportunities could make you qualify for in-state tuition, which really could reduce the cost to up to 50% of your tuition. So yes, as of right now, as an international student, yeah, it may be costly, but your tuition could change and it could be extremely affordable down the line. I definitely want to give you my email for sure if you want to reach out and talk to me further. Love to interact with you more. And this is the same for everybody else as well. Okay, so we have a lot of highs. Hello. Okay, Gubin, you just shared, thank you for sharing that. So I think that's the conversion rate of $1 and compared to Turkish currency. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I do apologize. Some of the questions seems like...
Peter, there are more questions in the questions tab.
Oh, there is none? Okay.
No, there are more questions in the questions.
Oh, in the questions tab, I see. Oh, okay. So Damla asked, can I transfer from Turkish university to American university? Because I'm already an undergraduate student in Turkey. So the answer is, yeah, you can definitely transfer. So the answer to your question is yes, you can definitely do that. The same admission process will apply to you still. So you still need to submit English proficiency test scores and things like that. It also depends too on how far along are you in the program. If you just finish your undergraduate program in a Turkish university, you can definitely look into graduate opportunities, maybe getting a master's or even a PhD in the US. If you maybe completed just 2 or 3 years and you want to transfer to the US to finish your bachelor's degree in the United States, you definitely can do that as well. The only issue with that though is it depends on what kind of classes you have already taken. And the process is once you have applied and you get admitted, you work with your academic advisor to see what kind of credits will transfer over. That way you don't have to complete the whole entire 4-year program because you already completed some in Turkey. However, some credits may not transfer over. So you may have to retake some classes again. But for the most part, like if it's like a science course or mathematics, a lot of times those courses can easily transfer over in the US. If you're taking classes like in the fine arts, English, that may be more difficult to do so. So you may have to repeat some courses again, but it is possible for sure. And it's actually a lot easier to transfer than apply without any college experience. So Devat asked, I want to study in computer engineering, but I don't know how I can come there and how I can take the visa. So that's a visa question. So how it works is, Devat, thank you for your question. So you identified that you wanted to study computer engineering. We do have a really good engineering program here at the University of Texas at Arlington. So definitely do some more research about our program. If you think it's a good fit, I would encourage you to review our admissions requirements. So if you are currently in high school right now, do really well in the SAT or the ACT and provide us English proficiency scores as well. Once we give you an admission decision, you'll then need to submit to us financial documents stating that you have enough funds in the bank to support you living in the US. Once you can provide us that, we will give you 2 documents. One is going to be your admissions decision. So hopefully it's a positive admission decision. And the second thing will be something we call an I-20 form. An I-20 form means that you have enough funds to support you here in the United States. You will send those 2 forms and you will book a visa appointment at the consulate in Turkey, the US consulate. And based off of your interview, they will approve a visa for you. And the traditional visa will be an F1 visa. And the F1 visa will allow you to come to the United States to study here at UT Arlington. And that's kind of a vague process. That's a very basic outline. It could get a little bit more. I could be definitely more in depth with you if you would reach out to me. So I'll put my email and definitely reach out to me if you want to discuss further. I hope that answers your questions. And then Hensa asked, do you accept the Duolingo exam? Thank you for that question. The answer to your question is yes, we do accept it. And actually, I do recommend you guys to review the Duolingo because the Duolingo exam, it is fairly cheaper in relative comparison to the TOEFL and the IELTS. So I encourage you guys, if you're struggling with English proficiency whatsoever, definitely look at the Duolingo exam because we do accept it. That's a good question. So, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but Lafayette asked, how is career opportunities in USA for international students after graduation? So that is a good question. So it is hard for me to say exactly what your career prospects are because it depends on a lot of factors. For one, it depends on how well you do in school, but also how well you engage with faculty members, professors, and how well you utilize your resources on campus. You're not going to do it alone. In fact, the main point of you studying in the US is to really gain work experience, right? We all want to go to college and we want to have successful careers. And my hope is really you coming to the US, whether it be my school or some other school, is you're going to gain those valuable experiences. But what I can tell you is we do have ample amount of resources on campus to help you. So you're not going to do it alone. We host numerous career fairs on campus that we invite employers from all over the country to come recruit and speak with students. We host workshops to help you in interviewing and how to submit a resume and things like that. It is a little bit different in the US because it depends on each individual student. So I can say there's a lot of international students that have been very successful here at UTA for sure. And it just depends on what you want to pursue. The economy will go up and down. As you all know right now, unfortunately, within our current time, the economy, there was a downturn. However, we're starting to notice a very big uptick in our economy because a lot of companies and corporations, they are now changing their business model to online. In fact, a lot of my students have recently received internship opportunities with Amazon because right now everyone's staying home for their safety, and they're ordering more products online. So in doing that, it really drives up the demand for people to have computer science intellect, to have more creative thinking in the business world now because we are more connected to the internet now than ever. So I'll say that the opportunities are still there for sure. Recap asked information for PhD of sports science. So we do have a PhD program in what we call kinesiology. It's the study of kind of like exercise science. I hope to provide you more information. I do have a limited time, so I won't be able to speak too much of the program, but please email me. I can definitely put you in contact with an academic advisor within the College of Science to give you more information about that program. Okay, and Salim asked, what are SAT, ACT scores are acceptable for freshman admission? That's a good question. For the most part, I have the numbers right here, and I shared it within the PowerPoint slide, but for the most part, what we're looking for SAT, ACT is, for the SAT, it's gonna be 980 and above. Obviously, I want you to score higher than that, but 980 is pretty much the cutoff. For the ACT, it'd be 22. Now, keep in mind, these are just minimum scores. I really encourage you guys to score higher because obviously the higher you score, the more likelihood that we can provide you a scholarship. And a lot of our scholarship opportunities are very generous. So ideally, you really, to be able to qualify for our many merit-based scholarships, you really need to be aiming for a 1200. So about a 1200 SAT and close to almost a 25 on the ACT is what you should be scoring. Okay, and then Salim asked, can we have an information about living costs at Arlington, Texas? That's a good question too. So living costs will vary from student to student, just depending on lifestyle choices and things like that. Obviously, you can live in a dorm in the nicest spot on campus, and it will cost a lot more in relative comparison to somewhere that's cheaper. So we have a large range of opportunities for you to live in. But to give you an estimate, I would say probably you can be expecting to pay roughly about $600 or so a month for rent. That's like your housing costs. And on top of that, food and things like that. So that's kind of just a relative estimate. It can change greatly. It's hard for me to give you an exact number. It just really depends on the student. Gubin asked, how is the University of Texas education system done during COVID-19? Oh, okay, so that's a very good question, Gubin. I'm really glad you asked that. In light of COVID-19, the University of Texas at Arlington currently, right now, has been moving to an online platform. So a lot of students have been studying online. I'm actually a student myself, and my classes have been moved to online. However, we expect by next year or so, we are going to be returning back to campus. In fact, we've already implemented a hybrid model for the upcoming semesters where students will be coming to class half time, and then the other half will be done online. We're increased our cleaning, and we are still maximizing our social distancing. Safety really is our #1 priority. We do have face masks that are given to every single student. So this is my face mask. I'll just show you guys right here. So I like it because it has UTA on it. But I think we've done a very, very good job for students, and I can speak as a student perspective for our student safety. So I hope that answers your question. And if I don't answer your question completely, I'm just trying to make sure I get to every single question. Definitely reach out to me through my email address, and we can discuss further for sure. Dara asked, athletic scholarship programs you have. So we do have scholarship programs for athletics. Now, this is the issue about athletic scholarships. One, it's good that you identify that you're wanting athletic scholarship, but two, we need to identify what sport you're interested in playing, or what sports are you you're good at, because every college in the U.S. will have different types of sports. Here at UT Arlington, we're really good at basketball. If you're interested in American basketball, we have a tennis team, we have a swim team, track and field, running, and I believe that's it. We have volleyball as well. So every school is gonna be a little bit different. So it's unfortunate we don't have a soccer team. I know a lot of students in the international students will ask me about if we have a soccer team. We don't, unfortunately. I wish we did. We have a lot of soccer clubs, though, that you can definitely participate in. So Dira asked, tuition fee for PhD education. That's a good question. So the PhD is the same line of tuition within the graduate program. So grad students, whether you be a master's student or a PhD student, will pretty much pay the same thing. And I shared it a little bit within the PowerPoint slide, but roughly you're looking at about 21,000 US dollars for 1 year. The only difference between a master's and a PhD, however, is a PhD is approximately 4 years long versus a master's program is approximately 2 years long. So you can kind of do the math. A PhD program will be a lot longer. So you need to factor in 21,000 times 4. But the upside about a PhD program is most PhD programs are fully funded. So the opportunities for you to receive funding support is pretty much very, very high. And I always encourage students interested in graduate school, definitely look into PhD programs, because a lot of PhD programs give you the funding support that makes tuition a lot more affordable. And definitely reach out to me if you want to learn more about our PhD in education, for sure. Is your high school diploma scores? So Edra asks, is your high school diploma scores checked? What is the score? So we do, so I guess the question you're asking, Arda, is in regards to your GPA transcripts within your high school. And to answer your question is, yes, it is checked. Everything is checked when you submit things to the University of Texas at Arlington, and for the most part, most schools in the US. So we are gonna look at that. There's a lot of factors we consider. In fact, most schools in the US will use something called a holistic approach. So it's not going to be one thing that's going to disqualify you when you're applying to US schools. It's going to be many factors we consider. So on top of your high school diploma, your grades in high school, we will look at your SAT or ACT. That's something to consider. Earlier, I mentioned test optional, right? Most schools are using test optional format. That may be beneficial for a lot of students because, you know, you've done very, very well in high school. So you don't need to submit test scores. It's just, you know, an easier step for you. However, if you've done poorly, and I hope that's not the case, if you've done poorly in high school, it may actually be beneficial for you to submit SAT scores because a strong SAT or ACT score can offset a very poor GPA that maybe you've had in high school. So there's a lot of things that you want to consider. So I hope that answers your question, Arda. Damila asked, I'm doing double major at Turkish University. Good job. Being a double major is actually very, very difficult. I'm second class at undergraduate. Can I keep going to do that if I transfer to US universities? So Damla is a double major student and wants to transfer to a US school. It is a possibility. So the answer is yes. However, it depends on whether the program at, you know, my school or a US school that you're interested in has the same double major that you're interested in. It is very common for students in the US to double major. The only issue you need to consider is how relevant are the two majors. A lot of times students will major in maybe like a field, like I'm gonna give you an example. They'll major in business, right? And then they will double major in another field that's kind of relevant, maybe like in marketing or something like that. So some of the courses they take will overlap and it makes it an easy transition. Some students will double major and they'll take a class in business, like a major in business, but then their second major would be something like far off, like engineering, which it may sound beneficial. The only issue is that's going to prolong your education. And we already know the cost of tuition could be high. So is it worth the pros and cons of double majoring? It may be. It just depends on other things that we need to consider. So Loefia asked, do we have partner companies that we can do internships during our education? So the answer is yes. We do work with a lot of companies around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. In fact, if you look within the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have one of the highest concentration of Fortune 500 headquarters located in Dallas. Each headquarter company is run by somebody that had graduated from UT Arlington. That is actually an interesting fact. If you do research, you will find that we do have a lot of students that graduate from UTA. They end up at a Fortune 500 company and they kind of rise up the ranks. So there's a strong network for sure. But like I said earlier, you're not going to do it alone. The whole point of going to college and getting an education is really gaining those practical work experience and hopefully getting you in a position where you can apply confidently for a job that you want and hopefully you love, right? So we have tons of resources on campus to help you. We have the Career Development Center here on campus. The whole role of the Career Development Center is to assist you in finding internship opportunities and connecting you with opportunities across Texas. So you're not going to do it alone. We do host numerous career fairs to assist you, and we welcome companies from all over, not only just Texas, but all over the country. One thing that I tell international students too is just because you're going to be living in Texas, just because you're going to be living in Arlington and attending UTA, don't limit yourself to just this location. You know, this is a great place to live. So I'm biased, of course. So I've been here all my life. But it's very common for students to take maybe a summer internship maybe in California, for example, or maybe in New York. They do an internship in New York, and then they come back in the fall to complete their studies. Or a lot of times an international student will graduate from UTA, and then they will fly off to a different state in the United States with a job opportunity after graduation. So the US is a very big country, right? We talk about the economy and we talk about the current situation, but the US is such a big country. So there's gonna be opportunities everywhere in the United States. It's just based off of how you choose to limit yourself. So if you're okay in going to the East Coast for a job opportunity or an internship or an OPT or CPT opportunity, then definitely take that for sure. So next question, can we waive the SAT examination because of COVID-19? The answer is yes, you can definitely do that. We are test optional. In fact, a lot of US schools are now test optional. So you don't have to submit the SAT. Now, the downside to that is you've mentioned, what is the GPA expectation? So my hope is if you choose to waive the SAT is that you have a very good GPA in high school that you're confident enough to apply to a US school. Not every student will be in that situation. So what is the GPA expectation? It depends. In the United States, we use a 4-point scale. I'm not sure in Turkey what scale you guys use. We will convert it when you apply. But what we're looking for is, generally speaking, a GPA of a 3.0 and greater out of a 4 scale. So 4 being the highest, 3.0 and above will be considered a competitive GPA. Obviously, the better, the higher the number, the better. But hopefully that gives you a range. But thank you for that question. Lufiette asked, is it possible to start studying online and then continue on campus? It was definitely possible for sure. That's how actually that's how it was for this current fall semester, is all international students will start online and then they'll join us again for the spring. Our hope really though is during the spring for next term is travel restrictions will be lifted more. And our hope is that you'll join us directly on campus. Of course, this is an evolving situation. So I would say it is a possibility for you to start your education online. It just depends on the current circumstance. As of right now, our hope is that travel restrictions will pretty much be lifted late January, and then you'll just join us on campus. So in which case online will not be possible. However, international students are able to take a couple online classes throughout their program. So Dira asked volleyball. So we definitely do have a volleyball program here at UT Arlington, and scholarships, athletic scholarships is possible. So I'm gonna put my email address as well. If you wanna engage with me further, I can definitely put you in contact with a representative within our volleyball program here at UTA to see if we can engage with you further. But thank you for that question though. NK asks, are we able to get work permit after we graduate? So to answer your question, NK, is it is definitely possible. Now it depends, because when you graduate from UTA as an international student, it depends on what program you're applying for or what major you're in. If you're majoring in a STEM field meaning mathematics, science, engineering, if you're majoring in those types of fields, you can potentially participate in what we call OPT. And the OPT program allows you to work in the US to gain relevant work experience for approximately 3 years. So you can stay in the US after graduation for about 3 years to gain work experience. Once you've identified a company and they interview you and they hire you, it is really up to that company to decide if they will sponsor you or not in order for you to stay long term. So it just depends. If you're in other fields of studies, it is still possible. You're able to apply for what we call CPT, and you can stay within the US for approximately about a year or so after you graduate, as long as you're able to secure employment in a relevant work environment of your major. And Dura asked, supply chain, Okay, so we definitely do have a supply chain program. Our supply chain program is actually called operations management. So we have an operations operations management program here at UTA that that's relatively close to supply chain. In fact, it pretty much is supply chain. It's about logistics and things like that. And I think that's a really interesting field, especially nowadays. In light of COVID-19, what we're seeing is a lot more people ordering things from online. So we really need the supply chain management and the support in big warehouses so we can sort and organize items and materials for shipment, like FedEx, UPS, things like that. Those companies for sure definitely will provide internship opportunities and things like that. So I think that's a really strong career field, a strong major for sure. Damala asks, I am doing software engineering and industrial engineering. Thank you for sharing that. So the good news is software engineering and industrial engineering both fall under the College of Engineering. We do offer both of those programs. Software engineering really falls under computer science here at UTA. The good news is that they follow the same engineering track. So some of your classes you take, whether it be mathematics, the entry courses, will be relatively close. So there's gonna be some overlap. But software engineering and industrial engineering, there are some separate pathways. So once you get to that, towards the end of your track of education, you'll be taking some different courses. So there is gonna be some differences between those two tracks. It is interesting though, and I think that's a really good fit if you're interested in both those fields. I have to warn you, engineering is a very challenging field. Since you're already interested in engineering, I'm sure you already know more about engineering than I do. I'm not an engineering major, but I can definitely put you in contact with our engineering advisors, and they can definitely share more information about our wonderful programs within the College of Engineering. So I'll put my email just in case, even though I shared it with you guys already. I really want to continue to engage with you guys. It seems like this is a very lively audience. I just want to let you guys know that I'm here to answer as many questions as I can. And then Gulben asked, do you know about pharmacy programs in the US for pharmacists? Okay, so unfortunately, here at UT Arlington, we do not have a pharmacy program, but I do know there are a couple programs within the state of Texas that you can apply for. And you've already mentioned some prerequisites. So obviously, if you're applying to a pharmacy program, they're going to be looking at, organic chemistry, biology. It is going to be dependent on each program. So each program, my recommendation is really looking to each pharmacy school that you're interested in applying to and look at their requirements. Because on top of the majors that you just listed, like you need to have some form of biology, some form of chemistry. They're going to ask for specific, like you probably need to take organic chemistry 1, organic chemistry 2. And then on top of that, you need to take an entrance, the entrance exam as well for pharmacy school, the PCAT. So there's a lot that goes into identifying the admissions requirements to a pharmacy school. So, but for the most part, it seems like you're correct. So most pharmacy schools will want some form of science background, and on top of the science background, they'll look for additional things. From my experience, they'll look for the PCAT exam, and also they'll look for letters of recommendations as well. So, and I think that's all the questions, unless I'm missing any more. If you have any more, feel free to let me know. And if I didn't get to your question, I do apologize. I didn't mean to miss your question. Definitely feel free to email me at peterlee@uta.edu. Definitely reach out to me. I want to continue this conversation, especially with students in Turkey. This is actually my third visit with you guys using this organization. And I want to say, if you were to reach out to me, let me know within your attendance of this event. I can definitely look into processing a one-time application fee waiver with the University of Texas at Arlington. So that way it won't cost you anything if you're wanting to apply with my institution.
Peter, you covered all the questions I was calling, but I didn't see any missing questions. You covered all of them, I think. Thank you very much. It was very detailed and informative presentation. It was very beneficial. Thanks again. If there are more questions, they will be reaching you through your email address that you share, I think. So thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.